use cases for AI and how could you use it? And then with your experience, we could brainstorm here and now. That would be
you
fun.
can elaborate my ideas, because
Exactly.
I've been thinking about this a lot, but
So let's do that on camera. You have ideas and you have one of the best AI experts in Sweden. How would that work?
business development on spot.
Live business
development. I have these e-commerce ideas, and here I have my AI advisor. How could we do this? That's fun, man.
Yeah, it's free. I would pay for this, so now it's for free, right?
So you get one of the best AI experts in Sweden for free. Use it, my friend.
Yes, use it wisely.
Fashion. I've been a lot into fashion, using AI for fashion in a number of situations. So there's a lot that can be done there, for sure.
Let's have this as a topic. Let's have this as a fun topic. AI innovation in fashion or e-commerce, and you have the business ideas, and we bounce how it could be materialized, what it means in AI.
Yes.
This guy can take us through it.
Yes.
Nice.
Really cool.
But back to, tell me about the, you mentioned before that you met a guy, he's like 24 years old, and he started in the last couple of years like 300 brands?
Yes, so the thing is I dive very deep into different topics sometimes, and I actually started with this. I saw an article about this guy yesterday because I have scrapers on Google. So if there are certain keywords online, I receive an email. So I received an email actually yesterday night about this guy who started 300 e-commerce stores in the past 2 years. And
is that a Swedish guy or?
It's a Swedish guy. The guy is 24 years old. He lives in the suburb of Stockholm. He recently bought a Tesla Y. He also recently went to the Maldives at Ritz-Carlton. So he's obviously quite successful, right? And the amazing thing with this is basically that he takes not only business but e-commerce to a new level. He's basically A/B testing business models on scale.
So what do you mean with A/B testing business models? What do you mean with that?
Well, you use A/B testing as a term in e-commerce, and that is basically when you have one page where you see if the orange button is working better than the green button, right? And he's testing business models. He's finding drop shipping partners in China, and then he is trying to sell jewelry or some fashion items or something else. He just comes up with a brand through a brand, these weird brand generators online. And he tests business models on scale. Most of them fail, but some of them have become crazy successful. And that is inspiring.
What do you mean he buys stuff from China then through like AliExpress or something and then sells it here or what?
Exactly. So in order to make sourcing lean in the beginning, in order not to purchase inventory for thousands of euros, he simply finds dropshipping partners in China.
And dropshipping means literally?
It's sent from China directly to the end consumer.
And normally that shipping is free, right? Isn't it?
Yes. So there is actually a contract that the Chinese government signed in the 70s, I think. And this contract says that China has, as the only country in the world, certain shipping terms globally. And this contract is still remaining today, which gives China like a crazy competitive edge when it comes to the shipping costs. So in Sweden, if you ship something from your warehouse to the end consumer, it might cost you maybe 7, 8, 9 euros or something. But if we recently invested in a jewelry business that is doing exactly this. This is another guy, so he went from 0 to 33 million SEK, which is roughly 3.3 million euros in 20 months in revenues with 25% in profits. He's paying about 1.5 euros to ship almost globally to the end consumer from China.
Wow. So that's amazing. But what were the main, when you read this article or when you got to know about this guy and the A/B testing of business model, what sort of stood out to you? What got you really excited about that? Is that the whole speed of things or how to view it? Or?
Exactly. You can call it speed. You can call it doing things on scale. No matter what you call it, it's all about, just doing something massively more than anybody else does. So for example, my background is from e-commerce, right? So one great example is Daniel Wellington. Everybody knows about Daniel Wellington, those freaking watches with the straps, that look like a trendy belt. And what he did was basically that he identified 5, 6, 7 years ago that you could take the watch, ship it to any influencers in the world, and they would post about the watch without asking you to pay them. So it's basically influencer gifting. It's called influencer gifting in the e-commerce space. And he identified this was working really, really well. So what does he do? Well, he doesn't 5x or 10x it, but he hired 80 people full time, direct messaging people on Instagram in order to find those deals where he can ship a free watch to an influencer who posts about the watch, right? So taking something that works and making a lot of it. Massive scale. And this is the same thing. Nobody starts 300 web shops in 2 years.
It's similar to a concept we usually use in AI development as well, called failing fast. So, when you especially build some kind of AI system, you never know what will work until you try it on the real data that you do have. And I guess in this case, it's similar. You never know what will work until you try it on a number of brands and ideas that you have. And then you try a lot of them. Better to try 10 or 300 than to try one and try, put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, and then fail fast.
But the concept is quite profound if you now contrast that with a traditional company who has a very rigid view on investments and projects and what we're going to do, and where fail fast is not an option. You need to succeed with your business case because your career is built on that. And you kind of see, there's a big gap here between what is really working in the new economy versus how we used to see things in a more stable economy. So it's massively different. So imagine taking that ideas and how do you work with that to have a lot of great ideas and test them and discard them if you're Scania or Vattenfall. I of course it's not the same, but there is definitely a gem here. How would you do that? And they are not thinking like that, maybe. Or some of them are.
Do you think you can do the same idea inside a company? So if you have an e-commerce company and you really want to find, what type of product that really works or business idea, do you think you can have an internal 300 brand kind of idea or do it in that way?
I think every single company in the world should. We were talking, as you said in the beginning, you said this is also applicable to AI. And it's the same thing because this is more of a process. So this is basically applicable to everything, also in life. Like it's better to test 10 different jobs in 1 year to see what you want to do in life rather than work on one place at a time for 3 years at a time, right? It's just a more efficient development process. And I'm a big fan of Ray Dalio, who's also talking a lot about this. Anyway, I think to be able to succeed with this internally, you probably need external teams. I would say almost like mini teams. Klarna uses usually, I think it's 4 people per team, right? 1 developer, 1 product manager, 1 specialist, and 1 other person that probably and hopefully is adding value to that team as well. And then simply you let those teams run by themselves. I think you need to implement freedom, and you need to accept failure, massive failure, in order to get this process internally into other companies, especially big companies.
So the bottom line is, it's not like you can copy the whole thing, but the principles and ideas. How would you clone that ideas and make that into an internal process in a big company, as an example?
Yes. So let's take a big company such as Vattenfall that you recently mentioned, right? I don't know anything about their business model really, but I know that if they would create those kinds of mini teams internally and just give them a budget and tell them to fail really, really fast, but also, not only think 5 or 10x, but really think, 1000x instead. Like, how can we change things for real? That's when the really interesting questions are answered, right? It's not only about shooting the rocket to the moon. It's how can we reach the sun? How can we reach the end of the universe? When you ask other questions, you just get different answers, right?
So in a nutshell also, if you want 10x, you need to start putting up 10x goals. You need to start thinking 10x in everything you do. And that means to get to 10x, you're not going to find the one golden silver bullet at once. You're going to shoot a lot of bullets. Yeah,
for sure. You have to shoot a lot of bullets. It's like angel investing. In angel investing, you mostly fail. On average, if you have a portfolio of 20 companies that you invest in, 5 at least go bankrupt. 10 are mediocre, maybe 1 or 2x. Another 3 or 4 are 5 or 10x. But there's also always the one that makes, not always, but if you're good at it, you might find the one that is 1,000x or a 5,000x. And that, on average, like how this would affect the portfolio that you own, it's massive. Like 99% of the profits within that portfolio only comes from this one single company, right?
Yeah, but it's a mind shift in how we think about innovation and improvements to some degree.
Yeah, for sure.
What a great conversation, but that's let's get let's introduce you properly. Björn Påhlman Spenger, very much welcome to the pod today, and we are very excited to have you here. You're running a very successful pod of your own, Framtidens E-Handel. We've been I remember you working with you when you were freshly baked out of university, so that's a lot of fun. And great to have you here. And let's start up with this first simple question: who is Björn Påhlman Spenger?
Big question.
Yeah,
but I think I think I'm mainly a dad. I have a daughter that is 2.5 years old. I hope I'm a okay husband as well. You'll have to ask my wife about this, but I try to be. And I think I've always been doing a lot of projects in life. It's like people have hobbies. People play squash, people play paddle, whatever. And I've always enjoyed building things, not necessarily physically. So when I was like 14 years old and didn't get to buy a scooter or a moped, because you have to be 15 in Sweden in order to drive one. I got pissed at my parents, and then I bought the book HTML for Dummies, and I built a moped web page, basically, which ended up in being the biggest moped web page in Scandinavia. So we had these moped gatherings, because I just wrote on the first page on the moped web page that, hey, let's meet at Valhalla Grillen at 2 p.m. on Saturday, and then we ended up being like 100 scooters at this moped-träff,
moped meetup.
Yeah, so I was doing that. Then I gave away the webpage, which was stupid, obviously, out of a financial perspective. And then I studied in Stockholm and the States economics, which also was quite boring. And then I ended up working at ProSales, where you also used to work.
Yeah.
And what I did was basically to knock the doors off the coolest office in Stockholm, which was the top of DN-skrapan.
Yeah,
right?
so our old office had the best view in Stockholm.
Yes. So I assumed you guys were the best. Tried to get a job there. I got a job there. And then we worked together for maybe 1 or 2 years. 1 or 2
years. And also, I think at the same time, you already had your own e-business. Even before you joined ProSales, I think. So almost right through school.
Exactly. So we back then had the business model to do drop shipping of furniture and interior design products. We saw an opportunity on the market where you have very specific needs when you buy a sofa table. You want it to be oval, a certain height, a certain length. So we said, let's go all in on the assortment. We found hundreds of partners to drop ship the products directly to the end consumers.
And drop ship, what does that mean really?
Right, so this is basically shipping directly from the suppliers to the end consumers. This wasn't really common 10 years ago when we started with this.
Yeah, but the core idea is that you don't need to take on stock.
Exactly. So and this
I was thinking more about Amazon drone kind of dropping packages and shipping.
Let's talk about this topic later. And today a lot of people do it from China. Back then it wasn't that easy to source from China, so we did it from Scandinavia. We basically called every single brand in Scandinavia, and some of them told us we could sell their products, and we found a process that would work. So we sold this company roughly 4 or 5 years ago, and was supposed to continue to work then due to a lock-in, but we ended up me quitting quite fast. And then we chilled for maybe 1.5 years. And
what did you do when you chill?
We went to northern Sweden, like this amazing, nature, and we basically read books. I maybe read 3 or 4 books a week. So it was amazing, really, really amazing to do this.
You and your wife, yeah, because you had your business together, right?
Exactly, and the dog that also joined us. And then in this inspirational environment, I got a lot of ideas. And one of the ideas is basically the thing that I do today. So what I do today is mainly Fashion Tech Group, which in the beginning was supposed to be some kind of a direct-to-consumer incubator. Let's translate those words into Swedish. So direct-to-consumer is this thing where you skip all the middlemen. You, instead of having a producer selling to a brand, selling to an agency, selling to a wholesaler, and selling to the end consumer, instead of having this complex chain where 4 or 5 different parties need to share the profits of the product, you basically go to the supplier, you buy products from them, and you ship it directly to the end consumer, and you sell the products digitally, obviously. So this the result of this is that you have great gross margins, and in order also to even be more profitable from start, we also thought, how can we remove this big batch of money that is going to marketing? And what we did was to create those brands with big influencers so that we minimized the marketing cost. So suddenly we had a business model where we took away all the middlemen, we sold products for 80% gross margin to end consumers, and we barely had a marketing spend.
Yeah, because you've been part of the revolution of sort of new types of marketing, influencer marketing, and could you in a nutshell describe influencer marketing?
Well, I think so. There is a lot of people there. Okay, 20 years ago, the people that were known in the world, the famous people were either way soccer stars such as David Beckham, or a band such as Backstreet Boys, or a TV personality. That's where media was previously, right? They were on television. Everybody watched television, so if you were a television host, you were famous, right? And this changed until 2021 today, because there is social platforms. So there's a lot of famous people created on the social platforms such as TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, etc. And this just changes the power kind of. It takes away a little bit of power from the media, traditional media houses, and it gives a lot of power to the Bianca Ingrossos that want to do something with their life.
And you tapped into this, and you tried to understand how to use that in the context of fashion brands.
Exactly. So we initially had an idea of creating fashion brands for influencers and taking equity as payment. So doing sourcing, logistics, operations, IT, etc. Bringing this package of value, which we thought this is our value proposition. Let's bring it to the influencer and let's create a brand together. And we ended up doing 4 brands last year. So 2 of them went good, 2 of them failed. And today we're also doing further things. One of them is to buy brands, buy direct-to-consumer brands, and developing them and scaling them. But we also plan to create in-house brands in the future. So create brands ourselves.
Can you just give some example of a brand and how you find that, and how you come up with this is actually the brand we're going to go for, and the price we're going to sell? What's your thinking there? How do you go about doing that? It's
a super interesting question, because that is crazy hard, and I'm really a process person. So what I see is just the relations between input and outcome, basically. So I'm really strategic and really don't care about the brand itself. But some people really care about the brand, and especially internally, we luckily have those kinds of people too, right? But what we saw is that it's super hard to craft a concept that, where you just for sure know that it's working. It's super hard to estimate the success of a brand. Some of them that we didn't have big hopes, they became crazy successful. And some of the brands where we have had amazing hopes didn't become successful. And it's just too complex to say whether a brand and the products and the price tags are something that your target audience wants. It's
just
almost
like
impossible.
AI development. You never know in advance, and you get so frustrated with the model that actually you thought would work the least actually turned out to work the best.
But isn't that this is a quite profound topic, because if that is the real truth that we can't really know, and here we are and we do business cases and plans and we go to pitches like we know the shit, but in reality, if we are more humble, we would have a different approach where basically, we kind of need to do several topics and we need to test which brand will fly.
Yeah, and we learned this the hard way, So we really, partly we launched most of the brands in the middle of Corona, which was both good and bad. But partly we learned that it's too hard to guess. So there is new processes, and we will probably talk about this later today. There is people that I have met now very, very recently that create hundreds of e-commerce shops and brands at the same time, only for the purpose to test which one is working. Basically, a super lean, testing of a business case or a business concept.
But just to give the listeners a bit more concrete understanding, can you give some example, perhaps one of the brands that you started that actually did turn out to work or not work? Just speak a bit more concretely. What did it do? How did you come up with it?
Yeah, so we start brands within the fashion space. And the best performing brand is called Mykuta, so Mykuta, and that was started with an influencer that also is called Mykuta. And what we did was basically to start a brand together with her, and we dropped it. And the thing is, when you do this together with a big influencer, you instantly see that there is a massive revenue peak on the first day. So let's talk about those revenue peaks a little bit. So there's examples. I can't say internal numbers, but I can send external numbers. Mm-hmm. So there's examples of, very well-known Swedish direct-to-consumer influencer brands. So brands that are founded by influencers that do maybe 1.5-2 million euros in revenues within 60 minutes. Mm. And it's because of the crazy impact they have towards their end consumers through their social channels. And another good example is Kaja Cosmetics. Kaja Cosmetics, and this is official data, which is great because I really can talk about it. Kaja Cosmetics was founded by Bianca Ingrosso, who is one of the biggest influencers in Sweden. She also has amazing engagement. Yeah. She has a podcast, YouTube channel, etc., etc., etc. And it took them 18 months. So they launched in November 19. 18 months later, they sold they sold 51% of the company roughly to Verdane Capital, which is a super smart investor. So no, stupid investor for a valuation of 50 million euros, 50 million euros.
And euros, so 500 million Swedish.
500 million Swedish SEK after 18 months being live
so there's some real numbers here to sort of back up this topic, and so more or less then there are examples here of different brands how that work. I want to also another topic,
Before we move into another topic, what do you think about the power that influencers has, especially on fashion? You think it's good or bad for people and users?
It's interesting. I also love. I think Alexander Bard is very interesting because he states a lot of different things, and it obviously annoys people because he can be very harsh. But the thing is, he also he doesn't care about the norm in the society, but what he cares about is what he believes is true. So he reads a lot of books, he does a lot of research, he tries to understand things a lot, and then he just tells the world what he thinks is true. And sometimes the reception from the norm is just very poor, so he gets a very, very, very hard time. And I think the influencer discussion is very similar, because I don't really want to say whether it's good or it's bad for the world that we have those thousands of young, 15, 16, 13, 21 years old people that have massive influence on the world and people's behavior, right? There is certainly a lot of different challenges within that. So I don't say whether it's good or bad. I just say that there has been a massive change in where the power lies today. And I think this change will, even in the future, go even faster. And you just have to try to learn and adopt to that change. And if you're a good,
it will continue to grow in the power of influencers, or?
I mean, to answer that question, you have to look where people's eyes are today, right? Where do people spend time? 10 years ago, there basically was no social media. So the eyeballs were all on televisions. And maybe there was some person that might have had a super early stage smartphone, but social media wasn't really a thing. And today people spend, it always increases over time, but it's like 3-4 hours on average on social media per day. This is like 15-20%, maybe sometimes more of your entire life you spend in social media. And this increases over time, so obviously the impact of people on the influencers also increase over time.
Yeah, I just want to continue this discussion a bit more, because social media, you can argue, can be good or bad for various reasons, and you can certainly find bad examples, but you can find good examples as well, I think. And the level of influence that people have in general and the way they can communicate now that they couldn't do before is amazing. But if you take, this will make it very clear, I'm not a fashion guy. I don't care that much about brands. That my girlfriend continue to annoy me with and say you have to buy this other stuff. But isn't it a strange thing that so much money is being spent by young people on the brand itself rather than the function of the product? Sorry for sounding so boring.
You sound very old, Anders. I can't help it, but oh my God, you took the old man's stance. Interesting.
But do you see a problem with that? They spend so much money just to keep up with all the changes in the brand. And I guess the brand also will just continue to grow and change in a much more dynamic way than ever before. And that will make it even harder to just keep up with, what's currently the fashion right now. Because it will change so fast, right? And that will make people spend money on things that they could have used for other things otherwise, right?
Yeah, maybe. It's a hard question because, people are very much different. And I think a human being, Homo sapiens sapiens, the only thing you want is to be basically be accepted by your environment. Right, and today in the social media landscape that we have, you see luxury, you see the Maldives, you see supercars, and then you start comparing with that. You're comparing yourself with that, and that is probably rather a bad thing than a good thing for human beings, right? You can also see in statistics that happiness has decreased. People are more depressed, and this was also pre-corona. So social media is not necessarily a good thing for us human beings.
But it's interesting because on the one hand side, you can talk about this on sort of societal level, and we can drive discussions on regulation and all that. On another note is like, well, the cat is kind of out of the bag. We're not going to be able to put it back in again. So,
but we can be influencers.
We can be influencers.
We can say, this is potentially bad or good.
Yes, but who will care?
Perhaps some people.
Then we need to be more influential.
If you don't say what you think, but no one will care.
So then
the only thing required for the bad to win is for the good to stay silent.
Okay, but by the point is this: if you want to win that game, you need to play the influencer game.
Yeah, and we're doing that right now.
We're doing it right now, yeah. So then the bottom line becomes, it's not per se the influencer phenomenon that will go away. How can we have the influencer phenomenon to go for more valuable or more human, better values? I mean, so the influencer thing, I don't think will go away.
Yeah.
But how can we as a society, instead of having the car, the picture of the super yachts and the supercars, how can we get the influencers focus on, I guess, sustainability? Circular economy,
Yes.
blah, 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 which I think is happening right now. I mean, like, it's hip and trendy to have, ocean plastic as part of your clothing assortment.
Sure.
So basically, that whole thing will feed itself. So when it's uncool to be bad in terms of creating, what is not good for society, if you want to be an influencer and you feel your environment, well, more and more brands come up now, which is, we have, fashion being created by, cotton with zero impact on water and stuff like that. They have their green tech, huge green tech conference or event in Berlin. And there's a lot of fashion brands that sort of highlight, well, we can do cool fashion that is sustainable.
What do you think, Björn, about that? Would you consider creating a brand that's based on sustainability?
I mean, we always are, because you have to, simply. So, for example, we did a bomber jacket with a German influencer, and that bomber jacket was just like you said, Henrik. It was like plastic that you collect from the oceans. You create a sewing thread out of this, and you can sew a fabric out of it, and you can use that fabric in your jacket.
And then that becomes the cool shit. Let's do stuff that is costing more in a brand, but is good for environment, as an example.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I also think it's hard. I mean, it's a lot of different questions here. So let's just talk about one question at a time. I think the first question is, you were saying that the influencer phenomenon you were referring to, influencers have always been around. They look different 50 years ago because they wrote books. Then they look different 20 years ago because they were on television. Now they look different because they are on social media. And this will change. It's just a landscape that changes due to technology and the development of technology. The other thing I'm thinking of is, the sustainability question. There was research done, I don't remember exactly by who, but legitimate research. And they displayed that if the end consumer could choose between, one white T-shirt that maybe has a cost of, I'm just making up the numbers here now, 60 euros, it's super sustainable, and it has all those features that are so important to people today. Then, and on the other hand, you have a T-shirt that costs you 5 euros instead, and you get 2 for 1 maybe, and it's made in the worst possible environment. It still shows that most of the people pick the cheap T-shirt. So I think there is a big difference in environment today towards what people say out loudly and how they act according to their consumer behavior. And I'm just talking about average terms here. Obviously, there is extremes in both directions, so I'm just talking about the averages. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges. Or maybe, the question is, should you put this on the end consumer, yes or no? I definitely think no. The parties that need to take action are partly the politicians and partly the companies. The companies actually do a lot already. They already focus on this a lot, because today you mostly have to be but I'm thinking of a lot of Scandinavian companies, maybe not so much in Asia as we do here. And about the politicians, I just think we don't do enough.
But if the market do exist, if the demand exists for a certain cheap type of T-shirt or handbag or whatnot, don't you think there will always be supply in the end? Is it really sufficient to change the companies? Don't you need to change the opinion of the end users still, you think?
I mean, of course it is important that that end consumers change their behavior, but I'm just saying that it's not going to be enough.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I can agree with that.
I want to move into another topic as sort of concluding a little bit about who is Björn Påhlman Spenger. You created and started up a quite successful podcast, Framtidens E-Handel. Tell us about that story and what your goal is and how that came about.
Yeah, so the podcast was launched roughly a year ago. which was in October 2020. And I just wanted to do a podcast. I love the medium. I've been listening to podcasts for 10 years. And I wanted to learn things. That was the purpose of launching the podcast.
To meet cool guests, to learn more.
Exactly. So I launched a podcast and I just enjoyed it very much. So I launch it on a weekly basis today, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's always fun. I mean, like that was one of the reasons, to collaborate with another podcaster. How was your journey to figure it out? I think you basically went quite lean. If someone is interested in podcasting, how do you do that?
Exactly. Yes. So I made sure to find an awesome editor of the podcast, which was Michaela Dorsch. I found her on Fiverr.com. So she was a Swedish woman, but she lives in Spain. And we found a deal that both of us were very happy with. Besides this, I found a studio, and same thing there. I wanted to have the guests, just like here in this podcast, have an amazing environment, So I ended up recording the podcast here in Stockholm in a super cool studio with some coffee and reception and so on. And yeah, I invite guests that are interesting, that know a lot in different niches within e-commerce. One episode can be about logistics. The next episode can be about, being visionary. The third episode can be about sourcing and production.
Yeah, I listened to some of your podcasts, and I'm really impressed with your sharpness in how you interview and how you get the discussion going and keep it sharp. We need to learn a little bit here. We have a different style. But one of the things I found really, really interesting when I listened to your podcast is that I think you're trying to demystify the new landscape. I mean, like you had some guests that talks about Generation Z marketing, how TikTok marketing and all that works. And for me, that is, in one way, very similar mission as we have here, trying to demystify the new world in terms of data and AI. What do you think are the sort of core learnings or things you've been sort of putting your finger on in your podcast that you think stands out that you want to share?
It's a very good question, also very big.
Yeah, it's a big one.
I understand we have big questions here in the studio.
That's the point with this studio.
I think one learning is really to, I would say, one learning is really to scale the things that are not necessarily are scalable. So what I mean by this is that e-commerce not only is hyper automated, at least most of it. So when there is things that work really, really well, for example, something like influencer gifting or some other marketing tactic, just try to think 1000x. Like how can we scale the shit out of influencer gifting because it's working really, really good? That is one of the big learnings. Another learning is probably that, and this is also based due to my, the history of the stuff we've been doing in business, is that you really have to fail a lot to actually succeed in the end. And if you just can increase the number of failures, you increase your chances of getting learnings and successes.
So this fundamental topic of innovation speed, try a lot of things and put them in production with as lean as possible, is such a profound idea that goes into how we code and how we really work with data and AI. I mean, like that's, I think, one of the main mistakes that a lot of traditional companies make. Oh, we want to do data and AI. They don't see the results, but they don't have the fundamental mindset of 10x in trying.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I mean, it's the Facebook statement, move fast and break things. It's the same thing as failing fast. And as Spotify founder said, we're going to be the company that fails the fastest. And it sounds bad, but it's actually a really good thing.
Exactly.
It is profound, and it is actually going into, we can take that into data and AI, we can take that into how to build innovation into an old company, or we can take it into e-commerce. There's so many topics here. I have one topic I kind of want to start with because we have you as an expert here, and we are around data and AI. And I think it has a lot to do with at least software data and all that. I mean, like in reality now, in my understanding and how you talk about it, you can basically get going with an e-commerce setup in minutes.
Yes. So if you look at the environment in e-commerce, let's say 5 or 10 years ago, you struggled setting up an IT shop because you needed those open source platforms and a bunch of developers. Today, this is SaaSified. So you have
software as a service.
Software as a service. You just pay Shopify 20 euros a month, and then you're good to go and have an outstanding shop.
SaaSified. I never heard that.
I'm making up terms here, trying to trend them.
I love it. It's good.
5-10 years ago, it was hard to find a good logistics partner that can ship products globally. And today in 2021, it's simply super simple because there is applications available. You just do 2 or 3 clicks and you're basically integrated to a warehouse, and you don't even have to meet them. You don't have to talk to them. You talk to this middleman that is the IT partner, and they solve everything. They even have prepared all the prices for you already. So you just pick any logistics partner you want to work with globally almost. You have this in every country in the world, and it can be done in 5 minutes. And, complex things such as sourcing, which is in my world, you have to wash clothes to actually color them. You have to sew the clothes, and that is a super manual piece of work. I would say this also starts to become quite automated. So if you, for example, want to drop ship any product category, you can just go to AliExpress. They are already integrated to your IT platform, and you can pick between tens of thousands of different products that you want to start selling. And that's the difference between today and 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. It's super, super accessible. It's like, I don't have a good comparison, but any person can today start a web shop within a few hours.
Yeah, and sorry,
No,
one in between. You even gave the example of a very successful Chinese company. Tell us that story, Shain.
Yes, so if you look at the most successful company in the Western world within sourcing in the fashion space, it is Zara, because Zara is very well known. This is like the main example in the textbooks at any university.
Main
globally.
competitor to H&M in Sweden.
Exactly. So they have an incredible time to market, and that time to market is roughly 1.5 months. So from 1.5 months, they can have an idea, they can design the clothes, they can create proper product samples. They go into mass production after buying fabrics, then they color the fabric, then they sew the fabric, then you have the finished product. You maybe have done a photo shoot with the samples already, and then the products are shipped to the stores. They have the Western Europe's, I would say, leading time to market for
turnaround times.
Yeah, time to market for new product collections, so they can always be on top of the new trends.
And what's that number roughly? How fast?
Yeah, roughly 1.5 months.
1.5 months to turn around from idea to in the shop in Zara.
Yes, which
is good.
Used to be incredible, and today, looking at the Chinese markets, there is companies such as Shain.com. So it's SHEYN.com. And
let's have a look at it. Shain.com.
Yes,
it's very popular actually.
Yeah, but I think
my kids love it.
Exactly.
But explain this.
Yeah, so Shain.com, what Shain does, it's a very successful Chinese company that has been around for like 7 or 8 years, and they already have a revenue that is as big or bigger than Zara, and not in China but in the Western world. So they have scaled this business insanely fast in the Western world mainly. And what they do is basically to scrape social media after trends. So they look at Kim Kardashian and millions of social accounts and see what is trending, what kind of outfits are trending. Then they create thousands of outfits per day, digitally.
So digitally, they're putting this together, some sort of AI, some sort of topic that can scrape it, image recognize, and translate that into...
Exactly, and at that
patterns.
stage, it's already sold on the web shop. So they start selling when the product not even is innovated in terms of, you don't have a tech pack that you would need for production.
So,
And then roughly 48 hours later, you actually have the product in stock and it's already shipped to the end consumer.
so the whole process is now very automated from scraping the web. I mean, like if we break this down, they have technology and ways how to find the trends.
Yes.
Then they have the technology and know-how how to translate the trends into a new print or a new collection.
A picture that they can use to start selling the items online.
And that process, that's like 24. That's the first 24 hours.
I guess so. I mean, I talked to my colleague about this, who is an expert within sourcing, and he told me that it's basically impossible for the molecules, to move faster in order to make this even faster. So it's like the most efficient process that you can reach, because things in fashion have to dry and you need to sew them, and you have to buy the fabric, and there is so many aspects to this. So it's crazy fast.
So it's so crazy that even for you who are in the industry, to comprehend what is actually happening behind the scenes is almost inconceivable.
Yeah, for sure. I've been doing e-commerce since I was 14, 15, and things just surprise me.
But if you were to guess how it really works, I mean, they must have some kind of base products that they go from, and they find some trend, they find the closest kind of match for that. They perhaps change the pattern on it or the colors on it or whatever to match the trend. Or how do you think it works? I mean, they can't really produce it from the thread to the actual sending it to the customer that fast. They have to have some base that they go from, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you prep the meal that you're about to cook, then it's going way faster, right? So exactly. I guess that's basically what they are doing. But I think the scraping part is quite easy to just identify trends. And then, and you guys are the AI experts, but creating product pictures from social media posts is probably also quite easy. Yeah. And then you can start selling. And then you don't sell 100% of the items, but you have maybe, I don't remember the exact number, I think it's like 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 items a day, new items per day that they put online. They probably say that 90% of that stuff didn't work out. Let's focus on the 10% that did work out. So then you have certain rules. And whenever a product, reaches a certain limit, this supply chain machinery starts rolling, and that one is obviously not sleeping.
It's a crazy failing fast process.
Yeah, yes. But we've talked about this in other areas where we sort of said, where is web shopping going? And we talked about this from an Amazon perspective, that, in 10 years' time, Amazon will know exactly your preferences so well, so they will actually send you the product first and say, keep it if you like it, or ship it back.
Predictive shopping.
Predictive shopping we're talking about here, right? And to me, it's that fundamental idea of rethinking first principles, this whole chain in a completely different way. And what we are seeing here with Shain is actually, this is not futuristic. In some ways, it's happening here and now.
The question is how much, they seem to, in the Shain.com part, be focusing on the production of the material, not so much on the selling of it. What are you doing, Goran?
He's scraping the code.
Goran is scraping the code of Shain. Okay, you want to copy and learn fast. I like it.
I like it as well. That's turned me on. No, but so for one, you need to be really fast in customizing the products, to whatever trends you have. But it's a second thing to understand what each customer wants to have, to understand the preference of each user. And that's normally been the strength of Amazon.
Yeah, but this is a different part of the logistics. Here it's like we do 5,000 samples, and then we get them all up on the web page, and then we actually see what works.
You can't show 5,000 products to a single user.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Right? So you need to be able to customize that and personalize the experience for that. And the question is, they probably have a lot of that stuff as well in Shain.com. I don't know.
Yeah, so this would be perfect example for a question of what are the key trends in e-commerce today. Because if you look at this is actually everything that we would come up to today, it will be here. Recommendation, chat boxes, influencers, scraping, everything that AI can actually do.
And the whole supply chain, the whole bloody supply chain.
Yeah, the visual things about it that you were talking about, so you need to make it appealing. And as you said, 80% of this stuff probably doesn't even exist. You just focus on the 20% that people order.
So is your bet here that actually they put all these, product pictures out, as a couple of thousand per day, and then they start producing when they see, like A/B testing, really?
Yeah, for sure. No, 100%. So they probably see, and you can also apply this to many different areas, but within business models, within products that you sell, you always talk about the 80-20 rule, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just true that most of the stuff that you do doesn't work. So at least 80% of the products they put online probably do not work. We also see this, and what you just have to do is to learn and do more of the stuff that works.
But I think, I would be very surprised if they don't both have the, automated trend customization part and also the
profiling,
user personalization and recommender system underneath. If you combine those two, that would be an amazing combo.
I think that's the point, right? So in one hand side, they have the tech right for scraping and to sort out trends into collection. And at the other end of the chain, they are surely targeting which out of those 2,000 pictures they promote.
If you click one picture, you probably get a lot of similar stuff just by the recommender system itself, I would guess.
Yeah. So you see how much in the background is basically collecting as a statistics. Everything from Twitter to Facebook.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you have Bing.
You can see it all.
You have Google.
So now we're looking into the code, what is scraped or what is interesting. But I think this is a good entry point now, because let's back up and see what are we really talking about here, and what is this meaning in terms of moving into a data and AI first society, or basically a tech driven society. So we've been talking about the AI divide here a lot, right? To understand that there are some tech giants who truly understand tech on a different planet. And in this way, they're on a different macro life cycle, and they're innovating and they're growing as hell right now. And then we have the traditional companies who haven't really, they are still in the industrial age. They're still analog and trying to put data and AI on top of old analog processes. So clearly, here is the topic of first principles and those ideas that you cannot take the old Sarah process further down to 1.5 amounts. Is amazing. But to do this, to get it down to 48 hours, you need to rethink completely.
Yeah, it's an Elon Musk mind that has created this, right? Where you're
eating all our notes.
Oh
here.
my God! You used many wet his pants almost.
No, but it's not about innovating, but it's just about doing something totally freaking different than ever has been done before, right?
Yeah, this is first principles.
But what do you think then about Amazon? Amazon, if you look at the bad sides of it, at least, they have like 50% market share or something of retail in US, and they are so big that you have to, if you want to sell a book, you have to go through Amazon, otherwise you won't sell as much as you could otherwise. And they have amazing data and AI capabilities to an extent that no one else have, and can understand the user and what they want. And they do predictive shopping, and they use drones to send them the packages and whatnot. Do you think there is, you have started a number of brands. What is the chance for small startups to really compete with Amazon and these kind of huge tech giants?
Yes, now that is a super good question. So I think the nature of Amazon is providing a certain value, and that value is very often about speed and price, right? So when it comes to products that are about speed and price, it might be very difficult for other companies to compete. So if you're talking about diapers or toilet paper or maybe even food and books, then it's going to be very hard to compete with Amazon. And I'm thinking long term now, not only 2 years, but really 10 to 20 years. Because in Sweden, Amazon launched a year or two ago, and people said, haha, Amazon is out of the game because they didn't really change the environment at all. Amazon is so freaking big. This ship is bigger than some of, massive countries in Europe. They have so much cash. They can do so many things. They could basically buy the entire e-commerce landscape in Scandinavia if they wanted to.
If they wanted to, they could do it.
Yeah, like this. It's crazy. So it will always be long-term impossible to compete towards Amazon and the value propositions that they have towards the market.
So your long-term view on this is like, don't count them out because they had a bumpy start.
They didn't have a bumpy start. They just didn't bet on Scandinavia because they didn't care about the market size. It's too small of a market. So they said, yeah, let's launch, let's gather some data, and that's it. And whenever we push the button, then we push the button. And then we're going to see that it's going to be massive subsidizes for customers where they buy massive market shares. And it's going to be super hard for the Willys and for the bookstores and everything because it's just going to be hard to compete with an Amazon whenever they want to take the market.
So your insight or experience view on this is they are learning right now. They haven't really pushed the button.
In Scandinavia, yes. For sure. In the States, they already own 50% of online retail. So that is quite a lot.
Yeah, and if you follow the strategic moves they made in America and how aggressive they were, clearly they are still not doing anything on that scale in Scandinavia.
For sure, 100%. And there is also another purchase behavior that is not price or speed driven necessarily, and those kinds of purchases still have a chance. And that's where I'm acting, which is the direct-to-consumer space. You sell a feeling, you sell a brand, you sell, something else, a lifestyle. And that is going to be less, competitive towards the Amazon landscape because it's hard to communicate those brands.
It's
in this
intrinsic values. There are other values than speed and price.
Yes.
Bottom line.
Exactly. And
yeah. I mean, it's like what Google said once.
I fully agree with his view.
I mean, it's like what Google said once. They don't fear that much. The big enterprises of Apple and Amazons and others. What they do fear is a small startup that come up with a very disruptive idea that is, completely changing the way you do business or the way you do some kind of, product or service. And that's why I think you shouldn't just say, oh, it's impossible to fight against the tech giants. No, it surely is, right? And you have proven it a number of times. And if you just come up with a different way to launch your product and services, you still have a really good chance, and you can be really successful, even though there are these tech giants, right?
You can. I mean, in a similar way, a quite poor entrepreneur can still make it in many environments. But they probably won't own 100% ever. Yeah. And they probably do not want to own 100% either, because then they will be in trouble with the government through regulations. So they will have to,
probably on that border already, more or less.
Kind of. Then they kind of solve it by, innovative solutions. Yes. But so for sure, there will always be for private small entrepreneurs. But if you want to make it on massive scale, in a broader, not in a niche, but in a broader concept, then it's going to be very hard.
But we are talking about in their own game, because when Amazon came, they were not fighting Walmart in their own game. He was fighting them in a completely new game. So the same will happen with Amazon at some point of time, because some kid will find out new revolutionary way, create a new Amazon, and therefore it will go. It's the perpetual way of how business will go. So you start Walmart, Amazon, then, I don't know, somebody else, right?
And that's the optimistic way of seeing it. But
you cannot beat them in their own game, because they developed the whole e-commerce like it looks like right now.
But they also have huge amount of research into these fields. So, they are supposed to be very innovative, and they have, so much money they can spend on that. So how can you otherwise compete?
Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, they can pay tens of millions of dollars per year to the best scientists, data scientists, engineers in the world to create the most. And if there is a problem, they just buy the company.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's a very hard landscape to compete against. It would be super interesting to check what Facebook's market value at this stage is. I don't know for sure, but it's probably
in the top 10.
around, I don't know, $60 billion or something.
So with that pockets, you can do a lot.
Yeah, and
You can buy a lot.
I saw some fun, fact that if you put $1 bills or whatever along the way, then 1 million is this much, 1 billion is this much, and it's just, you can't even imagine in your head how big and how much that is.
So
If you Google for like top market cap or something, you will see that Facebook, Google, and Amazon and everyone are in the top there. Yeah, this.
Okay, Apple, number one, 2,563 trillion. Is that trillion?
yeah, it is
Yeah,
trillion. It is trillion.
It's
It
number,
is trillion.
Facebook
Okay, and
is number
what is
6.
1 trillion? Is that 1,000 billion?
You were a bit off. Facebook is 1 trillion.
Okay, 1 trillion is
A thou-
1,000 billion.
I
And
think
1
so,
billion
right?
is 1,000 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that is, you can't even.
So, what is the Swedish?
What is the interesting in the top 10? You have only one traditional company, that is Saudi Aramco. It's an oil and gas company.
The rest is
the
just
rest
tech
is
companies.
fundamental investment company. Okay,
It's
perfect.
just
sure.
tech companies.
Yeah.
It's just fundamental tech companies.
Yeah, this is investment. This is basically
Warren Buffett only has.
Buffett, yes.
Yeah, and then below Tencent,
Tencent,
Nvidia,
Nvidia.
back then. Okay, Visa banking, Alibaba.
Yeah, but Visa used to be amongst the first ones, and etc. You see, the landscape how it looked like 10 years ago, it doesn't look like today. So just
And
speaking that Alibaba and Amazon will stay on the top. Maybe in the next 50
and this
years.
is
but after that-
we've been pushing hard and discussing a lot. I mean, like almost like a mission on this pod. We are here to demystify AI because we want to close the AI divide and get normal companies to succeed in the new world. We think a more inclusive world with more people, more companies succeeding and understanding the new mechanics is necessary. Otherwise, the divide of who haves and have-nots will be segregation in a really bad way.
Yeah.
But always when you have a lot of power with less than 10 companies, it's not a good thing. It's
Yeah.
not a good thing.
This is a
Yes.
change. Look at this. Walmart number 17, $409 billion, and then you have Amazon on number 5 with 1.77 trillion.
But in that,
700
so it's in this context, I really like the Shain example because it's a little bit like all the traditional companies needs to wake up to the first principle of completely rethinking. It will happen in industry after industry after industry. So we talked a lot of we are fans of Elon Musk here, not maybe as a person but as a thinker, and
As
we
a
have
person.
talked a lot about first principles on our previous seasons. So the fundamental topic of rethinking from scratch your core engineering problem, your core market or business problem. And I think that's Shain is it is here. It's out of the bag, and normal companies kind of need to get on the bandwagon to figure that out from their point of view, in my opinion.
No, for sure. I mean, 99% are probably just doing the same thing they basically did last year, with a slight improvement of maybe 5 or 10%.
Yeah, they are not. We talk about this in the company I'm working with a lot, and some smart guys have said over and over again, we need to, if you want 10x effects, we need to start setting 10x goals or 1000x goals. If we continue to work according to the industrial age maturity in the industry we're in, if we can get 1% efficiency improvement, we can make a bottom line 5% improvement. As long as you have that mindset, you're not going to start up the R&D projects. You're not going to try the different things. So the whole
But I think
10x topic.
The good, positive side on this, what you, I think, represent as well is that you can, create small startups that are really successful by just, being, riding the wave of the latest technology, right? And
Yeah.
cutting the middleman of using the latest technology, brand as a service, more or less, kind of technology, then you can actually do stuff yourself or with very little resources in a very short period of time, right?
It's a very nice perspective towards the discussion we previously had, because the previous discussion was quite negative.
Exactly.
And the positive side of this is, of course, that it's basically democratizing entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And the people I meet today, they are maybe between 20 to 25 years old. They are self-made millionaires. They drive a Tesla car, and in my space, which is e-commerce, do those kinds of e-commerce brands. And they wouldn't have done this 10 years. It wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago, but it's possible today. And I think this will also develop in the future, that things will be more SaaSified, things will be more accessible when it comes to, creating companies or creating innovation.
Because this is profound also on the fundamental topic of, we hold the whole job labor market, and what are you going to do when you grow up? And if you're 18 years old in Stockholm, forget about getting an apartment, forgetting about getting the right job. And here all of a sudden, right, democratizing entrepreneurship is maybe a big part of the game of how how our future society will, what is Gen X going for? Where will they fit in, so to speak? So I think that is a big topic.
So what would you advise someone? They're listening into this right now. They said, I have this kind of idea. I love dogs and fashion for dogs. I actually know a person.
Fashion for dogs.
I know a person that do that. So I'm just speaking on her behalf. But how do I get started? You have this idea, and you want to get started in building up a brand for dog fashion. How do you do it?
Yeah, 101, the fashion advisor, step 1, step 2. Let's do it.
Exactly. So today, we used to build an e-commerce platform on something called Magento 2, which is this open source, quite complex. We had developers. It cost us several million SEK, but we all threw it in the paper bin because we saw that Shopify is better and cheaper. So
Shopify is a service for e-commerce, basically, or
exactly, it's a service for e-commerce. You can create, and this is also aligned with the previous discussions in Shopify, and obviously also other platforms. But I'm a big fan of Shopify, as Shopify also knows. You can, in 3 clicks, activate payment methods on local payment methods on 90 markets globally. So if the customer serves from Portugal or Brazil or whatever, they get displayed the payment options they want to pay with. It's just one service. You just fill it out once and then you're good to go. And in Shopify you also have now this app environment. So you can choose between thousands of apps that you just install, and then you're also good to go. And this, you have everything there. So let's start with logistics, which is important for Shopify. So there are several apps such as Prime Penguin or Bird or similar, BYRD. We work with both of them actually, where you just can click 3 or 4 times, fill out some info, and then you're good to go with an integration with a 3PL, a third-party logistics, physical, and you just ship them the products and they take care of this.
So explain this in a bit more like e-commerce terms kind of way. So logistics in this way basically means how to
explain it to the cat lady.
Okay.
To the dog.
So
lady.
You need a product, and that product can be needs to be purchased somewhere. And you can produce it in a lot of different countries. Different countries are good at producing different things. But let's say you want to do cat fashion, dog fashion. Yep. Then fashion items are usually produced in Portugal or Bangladesh or China. So you go to one of those countries, you find products, and then you start selling them through the Shopify store. And in the beginning, you can even ship the products yourself. But whenever you sell too much, you just add a third-party logistics provider that does the shipping for you. And that is basically all you need to know. And this can be set up, if you know how it works, I would say 30, 60 minutes, because there is like templates for designs and everything is there already. You need a little bit of a photo shoot, you need a pricing strategy and all that stuff, but that,
Okay, so you go to Shopify, they help you set up the payments, they help you potentially with the logistics. You have to buy or create some kind of website or something, or I guess Shopify helps you with that as well.
Yeah, that is Shopify, exactly.
But then you need to make people aware of your brand. How do you do that then? And you basically answered it already, but just, say some...
Yeah, exactly. So you make people aware depending on where the eyeballs are. So today a lot of eyeballs are in social media, and therefore it usually is in social media where you start doing marketing instead of some other medium. And there is Facebook ads that is super common for those kinds of brands. Yeah. You can sign up in 5 minutes and then you're good to go to start doing ads towards any audience, Tesla fans or whatever, Elon Musk fans, Elon Musk haters.
That's the beauty, that you find the community, you find your niche, you can pinpoint the niche.
Exactly, you can find a super tight niche, and even now the algorithm changed slightly because Apple had an update, so Facebook couldn't pull as much data from Apple as before, but it still works great to do something called lookalike target audiences, which is basically that you just import 100 or 1,000 people that already purchased from you, and then Facebook can find out whoever your potential customer is.
Twin analysis, simply put.
This is an automated way of finding your target audience.
This is collaborative filtering, pure.
Okay, so what you're saying is, what I mean with twin analysis, you have 10 or 100 people who bought, and those you feed that back to Facebook, and then they can understand the profile of them and find their twins in the larger.
Exactly, and the more transactions you have, the better becomes this algorithm.
Mm. And it's a pure recommender system, collaborative filtering approach. So
yes, and then you also have the manual tasks, which is obviously influencer gifting, which is emailing or direct messaging influencers on TikTok or Instagram, and you gift them or you sponsor them and create those kinds of collaborations so they show the product to their audience. And this can be for small influencers with 1,000 in following, or big influencers with millions in following.
And you pay thereafter.
Yeah, you basically pay them according to a strategy that you have, because you want to maximize the input, the money you pay them. And I don't think we have to go through that process here. I can, but but it's all about finding the best investment, right?
If you want to start small, you can simply try to find someone in your neighborhood, someone that you're acquainted to, that maybe have some podcast, some way to reach out to a group of people and have them speak about your product or brand, and just to get started small, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Word of mouth kind of marketing.
Yeah, I mean, it's that wouldn't be as scalable, but for sure. And I mean, for example, there is a web shop that is working with podcasters only. Mm-hmm. So podcasters, the thing they saw is that podcasters have trouble in monetizing what they do, the time they invest into podcasts. So they create merchandise for podcasters, and they have this marketplace for podcasters. So whenever you're a podcaster, you can sign up, you can upload your logotype or picture. They can print this picture, which is done on demand on a t-shirt or a hoodie or a cup. And then this product is sold directly to the end consumers. The marketplace gets a kickback, the podcaster gets a kickback. And this is
we take this afterwards. We have the after work when we drink more beer and we fix new business models.
Exactly.
Cool. If we continue with that question, then we have some idea of how to get started and how to use different sites like Shopify and how to organize the logistics. But let's say you become rather successful and you want to start building up. And it's one thing to create the startup. It's a different thing to scale it up.
Exactly, and creating is all about failing, because 9 out of 10 web shops, probably more, I don't have the statistics, but my experience is that most of the web shops actually fail. Mm. And I call it proof of concept, or I call it traction. And the definition of this for me is having a customer acquisition that is cheaper or below the margins that you have on the product. So you actually make money whenever you buy a customer through those marketing channels, right? So when you can prove that you have a positive customer acquisition cost that's when you can start scaling.
How do you measure this? What's your ratios? What do you look at when you're trying to look at for one deal? How do you measure that?
It's not really rocket science, because you just have this is the product cost, this is the logistics cost, this is the marketing cost, and this is the operational cost, which can be personnel or anything else, bookkeeping, etc. And this is very often about the same. So if we talk direct to consumer, where you cut the middleman and sell directly to the end consumers, you very often, let's say, have a 80% gross margin. So you pay 20% for the product. You pay, if you do global logistics, another 15 to 20% on logistics. So you have 60 left. Then marketing cost is usually roughly 10 to 20%. So let's say you have 40 left after this and after marketing, and then you have operational costs that usually is around 10%. So you should have 30% left. And when you can prove that you make 20-30% of revenue in improved profits, that's when you can scale.
And what's the steps you start thinking about then, concretely?
Yeah, I mean, 1000xing the things that work, basically.
What is that? Concrete example. What do you mean?
This environment changes so fast. So if you look at, I mean, the platforms where the eyeballs are today are also moving a lot. On Facebook, for example, it's only 40, 50 plus people that actually hang there. On Instagram, though, there's a little bit younger people. So there's like 30 to 60 or something like that. I would say that is the main target audience. But, the 20, 25 minus people are not even hanging on Instagram because it's lame. So they hang today on, for example, TikTok. And TikTok is currently the fastest growing social media platform. It's growing by millions of people every day. And whenever you pick your platform, you have to think of supply and demand. So demand is how many people are currently looking at this platform or in this platform. So how many people are the users of Facebook? And what is the supply of content on the platform? So how many people actually post on this platform? Supply and demand, the demand is super high currently on Instagram, for example, but supply is also super, super high because a lot of people post about their cats and stuff, so nobody really cares about that. And therefore, the chances of becoming viral is quite small. But TikTok, on the other hand, you have a massive growing audience. The demand is increasing, and the people posting are not too many. So if you become viral on TikTok, you can, get 50 or 100 million views.
But if we speak a bit more like almost philosophical about this, I'm going a bit Lex Friedman here, I feel.
We need Lex Friedman.
No, but you mentioned a number of Chinese companies, and we have, of course, the big Alibabas that is bigger than most people think, and Tencent and Baidu and whatever. And then we have these Shain.com and TikTok. What do you think about the future when it comes to Chinese companies versus European or American? What do you think will happen there in that market space?
It's also a very good question, and I can highly recommend to read Ray Dalio. So
Ray Dalio?
Do you know Ray Dalio?
Yeah, the economist.
Yeah, so Ray Dalio, he's a banker. He runs his own fund, a hedge fund, and he's been doing this crazy successful over the past years. And he's come to an age now where he wants to give back to the world. So everything he knows is summarized in a book that is called Principles. He's also actually launching reports from his hedge fund for free online. And those are quite complex. It's like 50 to 80 pages with big analysis and stuff. But the thing is, he has roughly 300 people that full-time work with analyzing the environment in the world. So that they can maximize the profits for their investors. And even before the pandemic, he had a pandemic expert, full-time working on pandemics. So
he's switched on.
So I'm saying this because he's really legitimate, and he's also, he wants good for the world. He wants to give back now. And what he has been doing is basically to analyzing, 15, 16, 17 different factors affecting let's call it a global leader or a world leader I'm referring to USA. I mean, this changed in the past, right? First, it was the Netherlands because they built ships that bought a lot of different, peppers and salt that transported this, and they became super rich. Then the Netherlands fell, and then Great Britain came along, did the same thing but better, with better boats and stuff. So they were made more efficient, better technology, and then Great Britain fall, and then after this, the American USA came and basically did the same thing. So Ray Dalio is talking about cycles, and he's talking partly about short-term debt cycles, which is every 7th to 10th year there is a crash on the market. And he's talking about long-term debt cycles, which is every 70th to 100th year, basically. And he is arguing for that roughly every 7th to 100th year, there is a massive change in the world, and the fundamentals behind this, or the most important factor behind this, is debt. So when there is a change in the world order, debt is erased, often through war. War is killing, means inflation and every bad thing you can imagine. And then that debt is erased, and everybody starts basically at zero. And there is very often also a new world order while this happens, with a new world currency, right? So the US dollar hasn't been the world's main currency forever, but only for 70, 80, 90 years. And he's saying that we have a similar change coming in the future again. And then he defines those 15, 16, 17 factors, which can be how is the income among people? Help me out here. So the
distribution of income, or the
distribution of income is always in the late cycle. The rich are super rich, the poor are super poor. There is a lot of different factors affecting this. He's like looking at the trends from the past world orders and comparing them to the current world order. And interesting is that you see that in the end of that cycle, the US dollar, the currency that the entire world uses always falls. So that's the last thing happening. And he's also, and to answer your question, this was a long answer.
We love it. We love it. This is education. I love it. I really like it.
To answer your question, he argues that China most probably will become the new world power, because simply they are growing really fast. They are doing things better than the Western world, and the United States will fall in global power.
And therefore, and even to the point where the currency, what we are following, if you follow that whole logic, could also switch how we look at the different currencies we follow today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look at what happens, and now we're talking finance almost, and I'm no expert within that, but what happens when you have a massive debt, which we currently see, and we don't see that the debt decreases, but rather increases. Sooner or later, you just lose trust for a currency. You don't believe it in anymore. And in the 70s, the US dollar was directly aligned with gold, right? So you had to back up the US dollar with gold. Then they removed this. So then they just could print as much money as they wanted. And currently it's working. But I don't know, in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years from now, it probably won't work anymore, because sooner or later, the people that lend the money probably don't think that they will get back the money. And that is when something massive will happen that will have massive consequences.
Many topics there, but great
That's a really
overview.
good story and overview, and a very interesting reading.
So I guess the conclusion then is that China, yes, and the services like TikTok and Shain will continue to reign in some way and continue to grow, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have several perspectives on this. One perspective is how hard Chinese people work. There is few people I know that talk better English than Chinese people. There's few people that I know that work harder than Chinese
This is
people.
surprising. I go to so many conferences, scientific conferences, and normally Chinese people speak horrible English, but I guess it's changing, in later years. And
Yeah, I mean, the ones I know have studied at Harvard and Stanford
Yeah.
simultaneously. They speak perfect English, and they work 997, which is you work 9 to 9, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And I talked to one guy, I don't want to say a name, but he met the Shain founder. He told me that, he's working 24/7. A Saturday, he's taking the train from Shenzhen to some other place. In the evening, he has a meeting there. Then he takes a flight somewhere. He works on Sunday, of course, and does a meeting there. It's an entirely different environment, and I understand why that is, because they are still hungry. They still want to see. They believe in the future way more than we are quite full,
And I heard from a scientific point of view as well that Chinese scientists have a big advantage because they, of course, know English very well and can follow all the English publications that are happening. But they can also follow the Chinese, and it's a lot of native publications happening that only Chinese have access to, and that the rest of the world does not have access to, which give them a big advantage. So, I can't agree more.
It's a big market, man.
Is it?
It's a big market. They don't need the rest of the market.
Yeah, it's
Just
1 billion
basic-
people,
Yeah. They can just serve themselves, and that's it.
I want to go on a completely different tangent here for a while.
Actually, for once, I would like to go.
Okay, go first then. Go first then.
Cool. Because I think so. I was doing a little bit of research today about e-commerce and especially how do we align this with AI? Because I thought that it was very important. And you mentioned a couple of things, and then we spoke about Shain and all of this other stuff. So I will just mention 10 trends that is common on internet right now that you can find on e-commerce. You can demystify them or completely debunk them. Okay, whatever you want to do with that. But some of them are actually AI oriented and some of them are actually a little bit more. So I will actually read them. I will not put them there. So the number one, delivery with drones. You started with this a little bit, so I think it's a great topic to talk to. The second one, omni-channel experience, so physical and digital embarking into one. I think this is not, this has been on for almost a decade now, so it's not something special. Various payment options, you already mentioned, like Shopify translating basically your pricing into 80 different currencies in a simultaneous way. So I think this is actually really, really good. But then you have Apple Pay, you have blockchain, you have all of these other things. I'm not sure. Just memorize it so we can talk about it a little bit later on. Mobile commerce, 70% of all online retail is actually done on mobile. I think that is impressive numbers, actually, if you look at it. Personalization of the experience, so recommendation system, shopping experience, this is your domain under recommendation, etc., right?
Yeah.
Visual stimuli, so this is basically, as Shain had, like the images, video, virtual reality. H&M is working basically on this new, what is called visual.
You can try it. I mean, like you get an experience where you can try
Exactly.
the
So you
clothes
go to the
on.
store, you look at yourself, and there is this, the camera capturing your body, and then basically you choose whichever model you want to, and you put it. So it's quite good, I think. Automated service chatbots, right? Sustainability and social responsibility that we touch upon, which is very good. Voice search and voice commerce. Packaging and logistics optimization, which basically what is called Amazon had with
also
the robots
Shain.
inside. Yeah, exactly. So which one of those things you really believe are right now shaping the e-commerce? And then from the other side, which things do you think, which of those you think that AI can help with right now, or it's already helping? So I will repeat them very quickly. Delivery of drones, omni-channel experience, various payment options, mobile commerce, personalization of experience, visual stimuli, automated service, sustainability and social responsibility, voice search and voice commerce, and packaging and logistic optimization.
Yeah, I have thoughts on all of them. And let's start with the sustainability topic. This will probably just increase over time, and that's just a fact. So I don't think it's so much more to add in that topic. Another topic is drones. There is actually in Australia, a city already, quite big city, that is testing this, not only testing this, but that is doing this on a regular basis. There's been very recently over 1 million deliveries with drones. So
Really?
this is actually already working quite well. And they are collecting data, and it's more about the regulations than anything else. When it comes to mobiles, I mean, again, eyeballs. Previously, we were sitting on the laptop. Today, a lot of people are sitting on mobile devices instead. This will simply change over time. When it comes to personalization, that is super interesting. This will just become better and better and better thanks to AI until the last boss, basically. Where the last boss is, you don't even have to think of ordering something because it will be at your door already.
You will ship it when you don't need it.
Yeah, which is
Back.
AI driven already, and those bots or AIs are quite good already, I would say. What more should I comment? I mean, automation is interesting. Let's focus a little bit on this. So the trend in the past 5, 6, 7 years has been to, in a warehouse, bring the package, 10 years ago, there were people going to the shelf, taking the product, bringing it to your station where you pack those 3, 4 different products together, put it in a box, close the box, put the label on it and ship it. I know this because I've been working on the warehouse when there's been Christmas time, because then you have those revenue peaks. So everybody in the company used to work in the warehouse. When we were sold, I used to work there for. Okay, today there is something called AutoStore that is super common in Scandinavia. They pick the product for you, so you don't have to go to the shelf and walk back all the way to actually, walk those hundreds of meters or sometimes kilometers. But this can be automated, and this is automated on scale.
Robots,
Most of the
robots going around.
Yeah, it's a big square, and then you can use those robots. Not only the space used for the warehouse is much smaller, because you also can use the height.
Yes.
Right. So you can have this. It's usually, let's say, 100 times 100 times 100 meters or so, not 100 high, maybe times 20 high. And they bring the products to you. What is the next trend that is, being tested now is not only doing this, but also taking the product, consolidating them, putting them in the box, closing the box, putting the label on it. And this will probably be the same development there in the next 5-10 years as AutoStore developed the pick process previously.
The pick part is automated now with auto.
For all the sport and more, kitchen time, you name them.
This is AutoStore type warehouses.
Yes.
Yeah, and now so this is the first part of that logistic process, and now we're into robotics on the second part, which is the consolidation and slapping it in the box and putting a sticker on it. Yeah,
exactly. So it's scary because a lot of people will lose their jobs, obviously, and those people are usually very young, and they usually are quite dependent on their job and also needed to start somewhere in the work environment. So,
Well, the job market is certainly a bit interesting question, and I think we could speak more about that. But if we go through it a bit from an AI point of view, I think it's kind of interesting. I find it hard to not see
AI everywhere.
Every part of this.
I was thinking the same.
Drones, obviously, you need automated that. You need, computer vision.
What's the AI application? Is computer vision, right?
Yeah,
for
one part, but the planning and the whole motorics of making that drone work, everything is controlled.
And it's AI, back to the Luciano's traveling salesman, optimizing, optimizing the routing. Yeah.
The payment, of course, as well. And I remember once I went to this conference, and this poor, very nervous PhD student were presenting his thesis work, which was on personalized pricing, saying that you should price, not in a static way, but actually have it dynamically depending on who is buying it. And he was really proud of his algorithm. And suddenly one senior data scientist from Amazon stood up and said, this is the worst research I ever heard. We will never in Amazon make use of personalized pricing because we think it's discriminatory. And this poor PhD student, he was like falling, behind his shoes, or he was so embarrassed, and it was really horrible. But this is still, even this is like 5-10 years ago. So I think it's changing. But obviously, a lot of the whole payment process can also be automated and made more personalized in various ways.
Yeah, let me do a comment there real quick. So what we used to do in Confident Living is to scrape the competitors' prices, which often was done through Pricer or Prisjakt. And then we could price our own products according to certain rules. So we set different rules for suppliers or categories, etc., right? And this changes so fast. So if you buy a plane ticket today, the price is certainly individualized. So depending on if it's the first or the second time you buy the ticket, it's very probable that the ticket price is higher the second time you check out the flight. Because you probably need to talk to your family, think a little bit first before you book the actual ticket, right? And
And on SJ, Statens Järnvägar and I think SAS do it as well. And most people many camps are doing this, even though it's not obvious.
Yeah.
Recommender system is so obvious, I don't need to mention it. Of course, that's the core AI kind of application. Chatbots, same there. The only thing, normally chatbots today is not AI-based, I would say. It's basically rule-based, and they're horribly built and really poor performance.
They're not truly conversational NLP built.
They don't understand in that way. But what you can do today, and I think especially what you've seen lately with MENA system, and there is one from Facebook that came out just a couple of weeks ago called BlenderBot 2.0. It's such an amazing chatbot, and it's nothing like what you have commercially available. It actually goes and searches online while you're discussing. So if you ask a question, it has, it can answer, of course, in text, but it can also, while you're thinking about the answer, it does some kind of, Google search for whatever and extract information from that, do information extraction, information retrieval, and do the whole text generation to actually make it look like a human answer it. And I actually tried it out personally. It's
quite
insane.
Quite insane.
How fast it's going here. Sustainability, there is a huge amount of work with AI there. Voice search, it's obvious once again.
So it's interesting, like when we're picking that apart, there's algorithms in all those tech innovation. Like the trend is tech innovation, and if you scratch the surface, it's data, it's AI, and software. In a nutshell, right? There's not only software here; it's an algorithm dimension in all of them.
Well, software is okay.
That's a good one. Yeah,
but it's interesting because again, my space e-commerce, it's very much a physical thing to do. Physical products, you have to ship them, and the package is transported from A to B. But the baseline of e-commerce is always code. Let's look at Shopify, and let's also look up the market cap of Shopify.
It's probably growing.
It's probably growing.
I actually did. Wait, give me a second.
And
there it is, number 62.
Yeah, it's
63.
So Shopify recently raised, I don't remember, but hundreds or thousands of millions of dollars. So they raised a lot of money. So what do you think Shopify will do with this money, Henrik?
AI. I don't know.
No, I mean
what they need the money for and what it will go into. Yes.
Yeah, if you look at the hires they do on LinkedIn, it's always interesting to see Shopify hires only in Scandinavia now, hundreds of people. It's obviously a lot of developers, but
what type of developers? What are they trying to build?
They build an ecosystem. So the companies that become not only successful but dominant. What differs them from all the others is that they build an ecosystem that you just cannot break, right? And if you have Amazon on in the one aspect where you have the ecosystem for price and speed, and you're like 100% dependent of them in order to be able to offer price and speed to the end consumers, you need their warehouses, you need their platform, everything. Then Shopify is the other aspect of this discussion, because Shopify is now building, 1 year ago I saw 20 warehouses, now it's probably more. They are building physical things. In 10 years, I would say Shopify has a warehouse in every single country in the Western world. They will help you ship and distribute the products. They will have contracts with every single logistics company in the world to deliver the products for you. Everything will be basically simplified and automated. And we talked about SaaSifying previously, right? Everything will just be further SaaSified. And if Amazon is basically SaaSifying the speed and price aspect of things, then Shopify is SaaSifying the brand and feeling and maybe small business part of the market. Does that make sense?
Makes 100% sense. And here all of a sudden we have the old question: who should Amazon be afraid of? Not the ones that are trying to copy Amazon, but Shopify that is now springing up, focusing on a different part of the game, and doing the same play but with another ecosystem in focus. And just to bring that back,
if you look at the news, they are basically using the money to buy marketing e-commerce companies.
Yeah, but I think this whole ecosystem topic now you're coming back to my story and what I'm working with and the kind of learnings I have had in large enterprise, where you have the energy players. I worked in Vattenfall, and we looked at the value chain in one way, and then clearly we could understand that, okay, you will have prosumers in energy who produce energy, right? So all of a sudden, already 5-10 years back, okay, this is a different market evolving. It's going to be more of an ecosystem. Now the problem is that the old incumbents like Vattenfall and the other ones, they haven't really understood what it means to take an ecosystem play. So they realize, and they speak quite openly, we are growing into an energy ecosystem, or you have a truck manufacturing going into a transport ecosystem. But to reimagine your position, what that means when you become the key player in the ecosystem, I think that's the Uber and Alibaba. That's what all they've done. They made the markets around their own ecosystem. Shopify is sort of not only a good player in the ecosystem, they are sort of driving the ecosystem.
Exactly. And let's take this comparison, because you said Shopify raised, I think it was $120 million, right?
The last one is 50 million actually.
Okay.
From there, but so it's surprisingly how small amount of money they have taken in investment. This
compared to market cap.
Because it's only 6 investments if you see in the total, right? This is according to Crunchbase, and this is like pretty audited, right?
Good business with that market cap.
They are highly profitable.
Yeah. So you see, the last one is actually this year they actually had this is the latest ones. See, July, so from March to now they have got 50 million, 22 million,
okay,
73 million.
Yes,
so
a bit
accumulated.
More.
So Shopify,
300, 400,000.
So let's talk about how Shopify will dominate the ecosystem of retail. So Shopify is starting Shopify Ventures, for example. So imagine if you have a company that not only provides a SaaSified experience for e-commerce through IT, but also they provide the warehouse where you can ship the products. And now they also start owning the shares in the companies doing this. So they become kind of an incubator within direct-to-consumer e-commerce. So
the tentacles just grows and grows and grows.
Exactly, and that's what it's all about when you talk about owning the ecosystem.
Yeah, and this is the topic now. That trying to imagine yourself, we've been a producer within an energy ecosystem, or we've been a truck manufacturer within transport. Now we need to understand that we are a player in an ecosystem. We are not a commodity supplier of trucks. We are some part. We can facilitate transport. So you need to reimagine how you see your business model. Then you need to do the next reimagining. How do I become a player in that ecosystem? And then the end game, how do I sort of drive the ecosystem?
Yes.
This is, now we're talking first principles on business model, on so many levels.
Yeah.
And by the way, all of this is fueled by data, because for those ecosystems to work, they work because you have a flow of data from the different partners or the different players in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So here we can now talk about
Spotify.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, we talked a lot about technically, where's the world going? Is it monolithic, or is it more edge intelligence, or is it more decentralized? We have different various techniques. How do I make an AI model work in a distributed or decentralized way? And then it's semantics, what we mean with distributed or decentralized. So all the way to, like, we want algorithms to work across the whole ecosystems, even if people can't share data. So on a very technical level, I think we are talking about these topics. And for me, the fundamental driver and play here is ecosystem, meaning decentralized. We need to be able to play with private data, not open data, stuff like this. So I think there are so many layers of what ecosystem means in terms of making data systems and data and AI work. So this was a little bit of a play to you, Anders. How do you come into this? I'm pegging you up there. Do you agree or do you disagree?
Could you just repeat the question?
I mean, so my rant, which it was not a question, it was a rant.
Exactly. I didn't want to say that, but yeah.
My rant was ecosystems is the shit, and if you understand that, what does that mean from a data and AI perspective? I think it means decentralized, distributed, whatever you want to call it.
I like the phrases as this, for the big tech giants, owning the ecosystem and locking them in like Apple do or Amazon does is, of course, successful and a bit dangerous in many ways. But I think the conclusion from this and the discussion, I think, with you, Björn, is that there are ways to escape that kind of ecosystem. There are ways that people can be entrepreneurs and be very creative, even though they have these kind of big players, right? And I think that's a very important lesson to learn. And then we can have another long philosophical discussion about how we break the AI divide, and the ecosystem that they build and what Shopify is trying to do. But I know you can't really blame a company because they want to be successful, right?
But the point, I'm not trying to make the point that this is bad or good or anything like that. I'm trying to make the point that if you want to survive, you need to understand how you can game in the ecosystem. And basically, sometimes, if you're a big boy, you're trying to be the center of the universe and own the ecosystem. But there's so much success to have to be a partner or a player in the ecosystem. But to participate, you kind of need to be connected data and AI-wise. So what I'm trying to say is that the ecosystem idea will happen, whether you like it or not. You can participate in many ways. But I was going a little bit more for what does that mean for the underlying tech dimensions, if you want to participate in ecosystems.
Yeah, let's try to flip the question here to Björn, but I can just give a quick reflection on that, perhaps. And the bit scary part, potentially, is that all the data is owned by the tech giants. They have all the information about the users. They have all the information about the products, what they're trying to solve. So, you can come to the conclusion that, this is so scary. How can we, as a small startup that have basically no data, even start to have a chance to use data and AI? Because, I don't have anything. But I think, and it would be fun to hear what you think, Björn, it works surprisingly well with a small amount of data and the data that you can collect yourself to still be data-driven and use a lot of the later type of AI techniques yourself.
Yes.
And you shouldn't be scared, that, the big tech giants understand so much about the world and the products and the users. It's still possible, and I think you've shown it a number of times already. It's just that you have to be a bit creative. Right?
Yes, I'm thinking of two things. The first thing is something I learned in university. And, I'm a generalist, so I don't know the details about stuff at all. And I don't put those numbers in my head. But there is a number, I think it was 7, which is like the number that you need to reach to make something statistically significant. You know what this means, right? So in order to make a statistical announcement or you need to reach a certain amount of input, and if you have that input, you can say that it is X% that this happens or whatever, you know.
Statistically significant. Yeah.
So exactly.
The confidence interval is
exactly. Maybe it's 13 or something, but it's not a lot. So you don't need a lot of data to actually draw any conclusions out of that data. And I'm also thinking the other thing aligned with what you are saying, you know, that entrepreneurs or in 2021, you know, it's just like you say, okay, let's start here. So I try to never put my baggage of norms when I look at the world. You know, I come from a history and I'm growing up in certain places, and this decides what I like for eating or what I like to do. Because I like to play paddle, and everybody in Stockholm plays freaking paddle, for example, right? But this
I don't actually.
No, exactly. This
you haven't started yet.
Yeah. All this stuff is norm-based, and we have to be critical towards our own norms. We can appreciate them, but we have also to be critical because it's not always the truth, right? And the way I want to look at the world, and I just want to make clear that everything I say is also not what I really, you know, would like to argue for or similar, but I just want to find out what is most probable to be the truth, right? And with this perspective towards the world, you have to, or I want to try to understand what does the world look like and how can I profit from whatever happens in the world, and therefore maybe do something good in this changing environment. And if I can do something good in this changing environment, maybe I can do something good for the world as well. So Bill Gates is the great example, right? He's basically giving away 99.9% of his wealth to save as many lives as possible and to build epic, you know, things that potentially save global warming and stuff. So he's giving everything he's made in his life, he is giving away. And that is due to him understanding the environment of the world and trying to build something good in it so that he becomes a powerful person so that he can give all his money away.
But back to your question, and I think you, Björn, as a guest, is quite interesting around being insights driven. We talk about being data driven, insights driven as companies. And if I look at, it has nothing to do that maybe you can't do it in the same way as Amazon is doing it, but what did you do? You read freaking books for 1.5 years, so yeah. You know, why did you do that? Is to understand the world better. What did you do in confident living? You figured out how to scrape the web to get the pricing points of your competitors. That's freaking data driven, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist to get that done. You need to just be savvy and understand the world around you, and then use the simple means to get more data and more insights to further your means. You know, so wherever is your starting point, of course you can be insights and data driven. You know, and I think that you're you know, thank you for being here and being a good case study on that.
No, a good example is all the small entrepreneurs that I meet. Not small in terms of size, but small young entrepreneurs I meet.
Young entrepreneurs.
Yes. So they, again, 24 years old. They understand how to, you know, not do 2 tests on Facebook Business Manager to make ads, but to do 100 different tests a week. So instead of using 2 content pieces, they use 100 content pieces, so they increase the chances of getting it right.
Yeah, so basically whatever you are starting at, it can be AI, but it can be other things that gives you data and insights to have better decisions.
And you don't need a big research team on data or AI to actually start using data.
That's the point.
You can actually collect stuff like you do by scraping the web, scraping
social
media,
let's take that as a concrete example.
That is actually really encouraging.
You've been very humble and saying, I don't know shit about data. I don't have nothing. I'm not a data scientist. But here yet you are as an entrepreneur scraping data for confident living. Could you tell me exactly what you did? Could you remember?
This was like 7-8 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, so you're not a techie. Let's start there. Right?
I know a little bit of coding, but not too much. And what we did was to we Yeah, we used this system that could scrape code from Prisjakt and Price
What
Runner.
is this system called?
It used to be called Storm.
Something you use
And they
as an
had-
open source, something you use get on the internet?
No, so this was an
Are you
IT.
going for scraping, Henrik, or what?
No, I'm just trying to prove a point that anyone can start if you are a little bit, knowledgeable and interested. Get going. That's
Yeah,
what I'm
for
trying
sure.
to prove a point.
Yeah, and I think I'm not a coder again, but I think pulling off a script that scrapes Prisjakt is probably, if you know zero, you can probably do this in a weekend. And it's a lot of, you can even, there is YouTube, on YouTube you can have entire Stanford full business educations for free. Everything is available online today. So you can learn all the stuff, and if you have the grit to learn stuff, and if you're curious,
That's the point.
You
Have the
can-
grit and curiosity.
yeah, you can learn programming. You can learn anything you like in the world, as long as you don't end up in the rabbit hole and think the world is flat or
No,
something.
I was just making a point, right? That you are a business guy, but we're very interested to learn new stuff, and you just gridded it out, and you've put a scraper together, right? Did you have any consultants helping you?
Yes, we had help with this, but I can also say today in 2021, consultants are everywhere. Again, young people are really innovating. So I met this guy. He's selling swimwear online through his web shop, and he is the only person working in that store. Everything's outsourced. He has one influencer marketing team of like 20 people in the Philippines. He is outsourcing customer support, development. There is great people in Israel or India or whatever. So this stuff is really accessible and super cheap in 2021.
Yeah. I mean, it's very promising to hear, and I hope people get encouraged to, and not discouraged, because of the complexity potentially of data and AI encoding and building software, etc.
We are running out of time, so we typically have a couple of key questions.
Yeah.
So sometimes we even have like the final segments. Sometimes we have some core questions, and then we are asked the guest to choose what we should talk about. And I can't help it, but we have a couple of favorite topics. So you can choose where.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, let's do we want to talk about Elon Musk and first principles, or do we want to talk about the growing AI divide? I think we've talked about it already. Another interesting one for the AI nerds is to get different guests' view on the singularity topic.
Yes.
Have
Big
you
topic.
thought about that? have you ever put some headache into that? So so do you want to talk about Elon Musk or singularity, or you put the third topic in?
If we just say, you're not an AI scientist, but you know basically what AI is, or what's your view, as a non-AI scientist? What do you think AI is, and are you scared about it? Are you happy about it? What's your general thoughts about AI?
Yeah, so exactly. I've read like Ray Kurzweil or Max Tegmark and all those the big readers that almost everybody reads. And it's a super complex topic, of course. I mean, it's super hard to say, but I want to be an optimist, and I think there is certainly a lot of massive challenges in the world, but I also think there has always been massive challenges in the world. So they have also always been needed to be resolved, and many of them have actually been resolved. So I really think the future is entrepreneurship, and because the entrepreneurs are the people that simply do the change, right? So I think by having the right entrepreneurs that are actually doing the work that is needed, because it's freaking hard to be an entrepreneur sometimes. That's the only solution, and this is of course the big picture, and even the bigger picture is maybe singularity. And I don't know. I hope the world becomes a better place in the future. I hope people maybe don't have to work as much anymore, but I also hope they can find other things that are meaningful in their life instead in the future.
Do you think there will come a point where we will have a super intelligence, where machines are more intelligent than people in most kind of tasks?
If you phrase that question that way, I say, of course. I mean, because the only thing you always have to do, you have a graph, right? And that graph shows some kind of a development. And what you usually do is just to take that graph and take the same trend into the future. And when looking at this topic, which is basically technological development, it always it will sooner or later end up in the singularity. The question is when, and exactly what it will look like. Will it be a good thing or a bad thing for the world? That is hard to say.
You believe in Ray Kurzweil in 2029?
Yeah, do you have a number? We have had as a joke, so ask our guests for a number.
I don't have a number. I think it's probably quite far away, and a lot of people, when I talk to people that are too deep down into, it's almost philosophy, right?
Yeah, it is. Actually,
they overestimate the speed it takes to bring something to the market. So I would say 2029, no. But if you would say 2,500, for sure, of course. Maybe even 2,300, maybe even 2,100. I have no freaking idea.
Very defensive kind of estimates there. Even less than Mickey or Capco.
But in the 90s, we switched from a horse to a car, right? And then.
But it's also so scary to think, because we can't really imagine where it's going to go when that happens, right? We've seen all the movies, right? But it's a good one. 2,100.
I'm biting my tongue here, not to continue that discussion.
Come on. And we talked about this in our internal therapeutic sessions. Don't bite your tongue, please.
But I can. No, I shouldn't.
No, you're the expert.
Yeah, now you have to say it because you're already in it. So
when you started off like that, that's you selling. To me, that is selling.
Okay, very brief. But I had a friend of mine who went on Swedish television recently, and it was published now a couple of weeks ago. And he went with a non-AI believer in a head-to-head game or match, speaking about in 15 minutes, will AI happen at all? I think it was a horrible setup. It was set up to just be a conflict and not really come to any conclusion or being able to find any common ground in any way. I don't like that kind of discussion. But it was. I'm biting my tongue here again. But it's interesting. Okay, let me phrase it this way. It's interesting from a philosophical point of view to still discuss these kind of topics sometimes. For me, I prefer to be optimistic, and I believe that I want to say the words. I believe that we will, as humans, have a better society when we have machines that become increasingly intelligent. I think that's it's more than 50% chance that will happen. So therefore, I like it.
And why is that? Because you trust the machine more than the man.
But we can pick that apart because he's been talking to us off the camera, so I can tell it for him. but of course,
one of the quite a lot.
Because one of the core arguments, if you look through the years of history, how society has evolved, typically if you look at the long, thousands of years of macro life cycle, we kind of kill each other less now than we did thousands of years ago. It's less brutal, not everywhere, but in civilized society, I think we are figuring it out some ways on a macro scale better and better. So why shouldn't we be civilized at singularity? Why should that all of a sudden go away? I think that's one argument.
Yeah, and from an inductive, logical reasoning point of view,
that's the point.
That's most probable, I would say. But then it can go wrong, and then it can go really wrong. But it's more probable that it doesn't go wrong.
But the point that we have been making, or you have been making, and I agree with it, is that it's not the singularity that will fuck us up. It is when we have an AI going rogue that is not singularity, but it fucks up our, banking systems or whatever, right? And that has nothing to do with that. It's a super intelligent topic. It's simply an AI gone rogue.
It's a stupid AI that I'm afraid of. It's not the intelligent AI.
That's the point.
Yeah. So, when, for example, the stupid narrow AI goes rogue on the stock market.
Yeah.
Or goes rogue in kind of war situations. Or in drones, saying, I want to drop this package in the head of the person because I then make more money or something. I don't know. Some wrong in that. Then it could go bad.
Yeah.
So as long as we make it until the singularity, then we'll be fine. The question is if we make it until then.
Yeah, but then you also have the opportunity to implement a lot of technology in the biology, right? And the question is how this would how this competes with the 100%, let's call it, the real AI.
Okay, we are over time now. We open up a cool topic, cyborg topic. So AI singularity moved into biology. Is it okay? 1 or 2 minutes? It's for the after work that will happen now.
Let's keep that for the after work, I think.
All right. So anyway, we're running out of. We usually plan for 2 hours, so I think we should wrap up. And we usually also wrap up with some core questions. Is what is happening next? What is on your agenda that is sort of exciting?
It's a lot of stuff exciting. The podcast opens a lot of doors. That's one part. And within the company I founded together with my wife and Christian, who is our business partner, we think we have something super exciting going on. And we'll just continue to do what we do. I think people... the regular thing people say, you overestimate what you can achieve short term, but you underestimate what you can achieve long term. And I think just by doing the stuff we're doing for another 10 or 20 years, we'll create something beautiful. And hopefully this beautiful thing that maybe is aligned with the current status quo, which is, the capitalistic society we live in brings a lot of value to us, so we can do good for the world, right? So I really don't do this stuff for money, but I just do it for fun, and maybe I can impact a few people along the way in a good way.
So you have a couple of exciting projects lined up, I can hear, in between the lines.
100%.
Cool. Last question. If you were to recommend or someone you think should join as a guest, do you want to recommend a guest that around the topics of data and AI in different ways?
Yes, for sure. There's this one guy called Måns Song. Do you know him?
Måns? No, I don't know him.
He's also kind of an e-commerce guy, but he has grown into becoming crazy visionary. So he thinks big. He also knows a lot of more stuff than I know. So
Måns
MONSUCKSONG. So he's a Korean guy living in Stockholm, creating amazing thing and doing it with a big heart.
Måns Song. Say it again.
Måns Song.
You have to send us the name or links later, I think.
Yeah, that sounded really cool. Really cool. Anyway, thank you very much for that, Björn. Very cool discussions. Very cool, philosophical, how-to tips and tricks. Yeah, thank you very much. And for you that not joining the after work, too bad. We will have fun a couple of more hours.
Thank you so much, guys.
Take care, man.
Thank you.
Cheers.